Welcome, everyone, to our regular weekday morning podcast on the Zohar. We've been doing this every single weekday morning and sometimes weekend mornings, every single weekday morning, volume by volume, cover to cover, page by page, for almost 30 years now. There have been some exceptions where I haven't been here to give it. For example, recently, I was in the hospital for 2.5 months having operations, but I'm back and here we are. Baruch Hashem, thank you, God. I take this as a great privilege God has given me to initiate this holy project so long ago and to have continued it so conscientiously and so popularly. Thank you all in the listening audience for being there. Let's get back to where we left off in the Zohar, volume 4, last time. We've finished volumes 1, 2, and 3 and are now well on the way to finishing volume 4. Don't hold your breath, though. It could be as much as a year before we do. We go slowly, thoroughly, and deeply. Correct. In that regard, you have to look at the literal translation of nation, goyim. That's the Hebrew for nation, or goy for nation, goyim for nations, Gentiles. So this actually reads, the Lord shall bring a Gentile against thee from far, from the ends of the earth. The Lord shall bring a Gentile against thee from far, from the ends of the earth. This is in addition to the universal persecution of the Jewish people, which there is no argument has been going on for thousands of years. We've talked about that. But here, it's talking about a Gentile, according to our interpretation. And who was that Gentile? Well, you all know this was a prefiguration and prophecy of the coming of Adolf Hitler. His particular rise was in fact very subtly hinted at in the Zohar. The Lord, Yahweh, shall bring a Gentile against thee from far, from the ends of the earth. Germany is a very, 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 very long way from Israel, almost the ends of the earth. Rabbi Eliezer asked, does God ever make an Israelite his agent? Whoa. Hang on a minute. Listen to the juxtaposition. The Lord shall bring a Gentile against thee from the far ends of the earth. And so Rabbi Eliezer asked, does God ever make an Israelite his nation, his representative, his agent? That is to say, could this Gentile who comes against Israel actually be an Israelite? Do you hear this? Now, I know you're thinking, many of you in the listening audience, oh, that's such crap. No, I've never heard that before. Of course you haven't. That's why you're here, to hear things you've never heard before, but which are here to be heard. This is suggesting that the persecutor, the historic persecutor of Israel, although appearing to be a Gentile, would actually be an Israelite, what we call a crypto-Jew, one of the lost members of the house of Israel. Now let me back up and tell you, this is not, what I'm going to say is not really solidly supported by scholarships, by scholarship, but there is some thought and evidence to the fact that there are Jewish bloodlines in Adolf Hitler, as well, incidentally, as Negro, black. But the fact here is that there are strong, according to some scholars, strong Jewish bloodlines in Adolf Hitler, which he knew about, they claim, and did his absolute best to eradicate from the record. Contrary to what most people think, the young Adolf Hitler was very familiar with Jews and very chummy with them. I've published a paper by someone else about this very thing. He preferred the company of Jews for a long time when he was a young man in Vienna. It would account for that. Likes like. Even when it doesn't understand that's the reason. It could well be that the young Hitler in Vienna looked at himself and said, why the hell do I prefer the company of all these Jews? And he began looking into it and discovered that there was Jewish blood in his bloodline. I might point out in this regard that, don't ask me to quote from where I found this, but it is believed that the reason Hitler totally bombed and destroyed the town in which he was born was so that all his birth records, along with everybody else's birth records, were destroyed. So there would be no historical evidence of his having been, in certain regards, a Jew. So again, we see this passage. The Lord shall bring a Gentile against thee from far. And Rabbi Eliezer asked, does God ever make an Israelite such a Gentile agent? And he replied, yes. That is a pious Israelite to punish a wicked one, but not one wicked one to punish another, save when he does so accidentally. There is a way of looking at the Holocaust which is very hurtful to the survivors of it and their surviving kin. And that is that the Holocaust was a sorting out of the Sitra Achra from among the Jews. There are among the Jews, according to the Zohar and elsewhere, those who are not really Jews but are Gentiles, posing, as it were, as Jews in order to bring about the contempt of the Gentiles toward the Jews. And what this may be suggesting is that one of those so-called Israelites would bring about the punishment of Israel by its sorting out. You'll notice that before the Holocaust, the strongest, smartest, most courageous Jews fled Germany, mostly for the United States. Whereas, if you will, and please forgive me, if you will, the weakest, the most passive, the most backward-turning Jews remained in Germany to be wiped out by the Holocaust. If you're following what I'm saying, raise your hand. the few of you who are here, just to make sure I'm making this point clearly. I realize and in advance apologize. This is much too early even now to say such things, but I am not the only one who has observed this. I'm not. I cannot claim credit for it, nor do I wish to. But I do want to apologize for the hurtful nature of it to those Jews who are the survivors of the survivors, because I can see where that would be immensely hurtful. But it did sort out the Jews, and it did bring them, get ready for this, to the promised land. It brought a remnant of Israel, my ancestors, the other ancestors of other Jews like me. It brought them, a remnant of Israel, to the United States of America. Now get ready for this. I claim that the promised land referred to in the prophets, where the Israelites, the Jews, will, according to text, live in peace and harmony, is the United States. And the great ingathering of the Jews prior to the coming of the Messiah was to happen here in the United States. Now, I know that's not what you're going to read and hear. You're hearing it here from me in this series of podcasts called Kabbalah for Heretics. I might point out that in the same way and for the same reasons, Jacob Frank, my predecessor, if you remember, the great 18th century messianic figure among the Jews, believed Poland was that promised land for the great ingathering of Jews. He was not correct, clearly. And from the evidence of it, even during his time, he was not correct. But there is far, far more reason to believe it is correct here in the United States. There has been nowhere in the world where the Jewish people, have been as accepted, embraced, and allowed to flourish and assimilate as we have here in the United States. There has never been any governmental anti-Semitism in the United States. There's been plenty of anti-Semitism. That's because there are plenty of descendants of Esau in the United States. But it has never been institutional, such as in Russia and Poland and Germany and Spain. You have to remember that the anti-Semitism in those countries was institutionalized. It came directly from the ruling governments. Whereas here in the United States, yes, there has been anti-Semitism, but it's individual. It's not national. It's individual. I hope I'm being clear. Only time in history. As a Jew, if I look back, as I do on the history of this country and on the history of my people coming here, you must remember I'm just a second-generation American. My grandparents came from over there. And my mother and father were the first generation of Jews born in this country. And nowhere during my lifetime, and remember I'm 82, has there been a country where someone like me, a Jew like me, from a background like mine, could have gotten as far as I've gotten, except in the United States of America. When I say God bless America, I mean God bless America. Quietly, persistently, cautiously, the Jew has worked himself up out of the ghettos of Europe and the United States into positions of great prominence, much to the hatred and anger of the anti-Semitic Gentiles who still exist. But we have. Now I want you to notice something. I'm not advocating this to begin with. I'm just pointing it out. Notice the number of Jews with whom the current Antichrist, Donald Trump, is associated. His son-in-law is a devout Orthodox Jew, just as his daughter is a devout Orthodox Jew, a serious one who converted. His lawyers are Jews. His advisors are Jews. Others in his government are Jews. Please believe me when I tell you that in my lifetime, when I was a young man, this was not possible. When television first came out, I remember my father would sit next to it, and when the credits would be shown, he would say, "Oh, look, a Jewish name, a Jew," because it was so unusual. But slowly, surely, we have worked ourselves up out of the ghetto of this country and the countries we have come from into positions of prominence. One of the great political heroes of our time, Bernie Sanders, is a Jew. Now, he's not a religious Jew, but he is a racial Jew and identifies with being such. Look at that. In my lifetime as a young man, that would have been impossible. I mean impossible. But just in 82 years, not only was it made possible, but it happened. You'll notice, however, the forces of Esau were against him. Bernie Sanders, although he had the enormous support of the electorate, was not nominated. That was the forces of Esau coming against the Jew. Not consciously, but that is what it was on a very subterranean level. The same is happening, and I must admit, the same exact thing is happening for the black people in this country. The prejudice against them has by no means gone away, despite what the racist white people want to say. But it is true. Look at the number of black congressmen. Look at our last president, God bless him and keep him, Barack Obama. So they too have been struggling up because I believe they too, like the Jew, and they may be Jews, are chosen by God to suffer and succeed in this country of all places. Now the difference, if you will, between the progress the black person has made in this country and the Jew has made in this country is obvious. The Jew came here by choice. Nobody ripped them away from their homes, threw them into disgusting, filthy boats, and brought them here to this country to be sold as slaves. But that is how the black person came here. It was not the black person's choice to be here. So the situation, although similar, is in many significant ways different. There is a whole group of, or at least there were, I don't know if there is anymore, of black Jews, Falashas they're called, and always have been. I remember my father and his generation would laugh at them for claiming to be Jews. I believe they are. Remember, there were 12 tribes, not one tribe. And each tribe looked and acted differently than the others. Now there's a great deal of hostility among such black Jews toward the recognized Jew. There is. I've never found it to be so, but it is. I have found the black Jews I've approached to be extremely accepting. As long as I respect them, they have respected me. They're not accustomed to being respected by Jews. So we see that it says in the Zohar, does God ever make an Israelite such an agent against his own people? And he replied, yes, that is a pious Israelite to punish a wicked one. And here I've been talking about the Holocaust and the sorting out of the holy from the unholy among the Jews, even possibly to the forced immigration of black Jews to this country, perhaps. Said Rabbi Eliezer, how does God use such an Israelite and an idolater as his agent? Has not your father told you, said Rabbi Pinchas? I have never yet asked him, the other replied. We'll get back to this tomorrow morning. Again, please, if you're thinking the whole time I'm talking, I've never heard that, that's bullshit, please don't come anymore. Don't listen. Turn to a different station, a different channel. The whole purpose of all this is to bring to your attention that which you have not heard, but which is potentially valid according to the Zohar and other works of Oral Testament. We'll get back to this tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I'll mark my place and ask my two recording technicians who are here every morning, do you have any comments or questions? Raise your hand if you do. Excellent. Go ahead, Yishai. Go ahead, David. Not necessarily in that order. Any order you come up with. Go ahead. David, from my notes, the Lord shall bring a Gentile against thee from far the ends of the earth. Rabbi Eliezer asked, does God ever make an Israelite such an agent? Yes, that is a pious Israelite to punish a wicked one. Now, I have to point out to you something I didn't during the actual podcast itself. That being said, the question is, was Hitler such a pious man? Well, the answer is not ritually. But there are many, many historians and psychohistorians, particularly Jungians, who talk about Adolf Hitler as a great outpouring of the self, of God, that he was entirely possessed by the collective unconscious, and for that reason was so worshipped by all the people of Germany. Jung himself said, just look at him, look at his eyes. You can see that he comes from the collective unconscious and that he is a great, as it were, tzaddik. So in that sense, in the sense of being close to, enmeshed with, and speaking out the words of God, he probably was. Am I being clear about that? Raise your hand if I am. That doesn't mean he was kind. It doesn't mean that what he did was correct or right. It means that in the mind of God it was. And God is this crazy, bipolar, insane quality. One moment loving, the next moment hateful. Remember? I hate to say this because people are going to call me a Nazi, but it's not. In a sense, what this is suggesting is that someone like Adolf Hitler was closer to the self, the collective unconscious, than the others around him. And for that reason was able to sort out the true Jew from the fake Jew. All right, thank you, David. Great comment. Yishai, go ahead. David said there are those who believe that the Holocaust was a sorting out of the mixed multitude. It did bring a remnant of Israel to us. It has been a country for Jews to have suffered, but to have also succeeded, indeed to have flourished, like no other country in the world. Yes, again, I have to point out, and I was a victim of it as a young man, there is great anti-Semitism in this country, far more back then than now. It's more hidden now. But I would walk down the street and some Gentile would yell at me, "Get into the gutter, you dirty kike." Seriously, out loud, on the street. Others heard it, didn't do anything. It was considered normal. But that was not institutional anti-Semitism. There's never been that in this country. Never. As there have in all the other major countries of the world. And never forget one more thing about that. And I hope I still have the listening audience listening. God says directly to the Jewish people, listen to me, those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse. The only nation of the world that has literally blessed the Jew is the United States. And we have been, as a nation, in turn, also blessed more than any other nation. Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse. Where are they now? The Nazis, the Philistines. Where are they now? Those who persecuted and murdered and slaughtered us. Where are they now? They are gone. But we, the Jewish people, remain. Yishai, go ahead. Waiting for Yishai. Before I continue, I want to point out to everyone who is listening, when I am talking about the greatness of the United States, the spiritual greatness from the United States acquired as a result of its blessing the Jew, I am not talking about the United States as being described by our current president. He is a representative of the mixed multitude. He is a representative of the Sitra Achra, of the other side, coming against Israel, coming against the Jew. Look at him. I just want to make that clear. Yishai, do you have a comment? Oh, hang on, I don't see it. All right, thank you. Just a moment. No, I don't see it, Yishai. Okay, all right. That's probably one of the reasons that it isn't showing. Thank you anyway. All right, everyone. That concludes our podcast for this morning. And as we do every morning, I'll conclude by reciting the ritual prayer for the dead, the Kaddish, in memory of the departed beloved brother and fellow Kohen Leonard Cohen. Yiskadal v'yiskadash me'abo. V'omo divro chirusei v'yamlich machusei. B'chayachon v'yomecha uv'cha'ed echol beis Yisrael b'gala uv'izman kore v'imru amen. Yehesh me'rabo me'verach le'olam me'omaya. Yisbarach v'yistabach v'yispa'ar v'yisamam v'yisnasei v'yisadar v'yisalei v'yisalal. Shmei d'kutra b'reichu Le'lo minchal birachasa v'shirasa tushbechasa v'nechemasa damiron b'mo v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya v'chainu aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mamov hu ya'asei shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Let everyone say amen. Well, that concludes our podcast for this morning. God willing, He'll give me another day of life, and I'll see all of you tomorrow morning. In the meantime,